On the 18th of September 1931, in an apartment owned by the leader of the National Socialist German Workers' Party, a 23-year-old woman shot herself in the chest. The then-charismatic but completely unscrupulous Austrian politician Adolf Hitler had just left his Munich apartment to attend a parliamentary meeting in Hamburg, but as he was leaving, he flew into a rage at his half-niece. Geli Raubal, who had been staying with Hitler to be closer to university, had pleaded with her increasingly controlling half-uncle to be allowed to travel to Vienna. Neighbours heard Hitler scream for the last time, "No," before he slammed the door to his second-floor apartment. When Hitler got a call from his distraught housekeeper the next morning, he was told that Geli was dead. Here is the story of Geli Raubal, and this is Crown Undone. Angela Marie Raubal, Geli to those who knew her best, was born on the 7th of June 1908 in Linz, Austria-Hungary. She was the second child and eldest daughter of Adolf Hitler's half-sister Angela, who was the second child of Alois Hitler, and his second wife Franziska. Alois Jr. had been born just a year later. After Franziska died in 1884, the one-year-old Angela was brought up by her father and his third wife and first cousin once removed, Clara. The first three of Alois and Clara's children died as infants. Gustav and Ida died of diphtheria during the winter of 1887, and Otto was dead by 1892. 6 years later, Clara gave birth to a third son, Adolf, born on the 20th of April 1889. They had two more children, Edmund and Paula, but Adolf and Paula were the only two to survive until adulthood. According to Alois Jr.'s son, William, Clara was a typical stepmother to her two stepchildren, but their father, Alois, could be cruel and uninterested to both his wife and his children. In his autobiography, Hitler wrote that, quote, "I honoured my father, but I loved my mother." Angela and Adolf grew up close to one another despite the age gap. At 20, Angela married the junior tax inspector, Leo Raubal, and in 1906 their first child, Leo, was born. In June 1908, Angela gave birth to Geli, and their second daughter, Elfriede, was born in 1910. Tragically, Leo Sr. died just 2 years later. Although Angela lost contact with her half-brother for a decade after Geli's birth, Hitler reached out again in 1919, and when he was confined to Landsberg prison for 9 months of a 5-year sentence for treason in 1924, after his failed beer hall putsch, Angela made the trip from Vienna to visit him. Once he was released, Hitler would often spend time at his holiday home and mountainside retreat, the Berghof, in the Bavarian Alps. Years later, the same retreat would become one of the most well-known of the Führer's headquarters, and was known throughout the English-speaking world as the Eagle's Nest. Hitler managed to live off party funds and commissions from pieces he'd write for nationalist newspapers, and though Angela, with Geli and Elfriede in tow, regularly visited Hitler in the Berghof, she was offered an official position as housekeeper in 1928, and the three of them soon moved in. Geli became one of Hitler's most important companions, and he seemed to become utterly devoted to the niece that was nearly 2 decades his junior. Baldur von Schirach, soon to be the leader of Hitler Youth, described Geli in his memoirs published after the Second World War, writing, quote, "The girl at Hitler's side was of medium size, well-developed, had dark, rather wavy hair and lively brown eyes. Geli was allowed to laugh at her uncle Alf and adjust his tie when it had slipped. Around Geli, Hitler seemed to be relaxed and almost playful, and when she was present, he would avoid the typical crazed and endless monologues that would soon come to mark his leadership. But when Geli hinted at a burgeoning relationship with her half-uncle's chauffeur, Hitler was furious. In a letter to the chauffeur, Emil Maurice, from December 1928, Geli wrote that upon receiving 3 of Maurice's letters that day, quote, "Never have I been so happy. I can only give you my love and be unconditionally faithful to you. I love you so infinitely much. But Uncle Adolf insists that I should go on with my studies." When Hitler became aware of the affair, he immediately dismissed Maurice from his personal service, though he remained a member of the paramilitary SS. A year later, the 21-year-old Geli moved into her half-uncle's Munich apartment after enrolling at the nearby Ludwig Maximilian University to study medicine. Following the fiasco that was Geli's affair with Maurice, Hitler became ever more controlling. Geli wasn't allowed to associate with her friends and was to have someone, preferably Hitler, supervising her at all times. She'd be accompanied on trips to the opera, the cinema, and the shops. Rumours began to swirl that Hitler was having a secret affair with Geli. In fact, SA officer and frequent guard of Hitler's Munich apartment, Wilhelm Stocker, told the author of the 1974 book Eva and Adolf, Glenn Infield, that Geli had, quote, admitted to me that at times Hitler made her do things in the privacy of her room that sickened her, but when I asked her why she didn't refuse to do them, she just shrugged and said that she didn't want to lose him to some woman that would do what he wanted. When she was finally prepared to escape from her uncle's possessive control, Geli hatched a plan to move to Vienna so she could take up singing lessons. When the Second World War had ended, Geli's mother told interrogators that her daughter was prohibited by Hitler from continuing a relationship with a man from Linz that she was hoping to marry. No matter how much she pleaded, Hitler refused to let his beloved niece go. The next day, Geli was dead. The husband of Hitler's housekeeper, George Winter, was suspicious when on the morning of the 19th, Geli hadn't come down for breakfast. At 10 o'clock, Winter forced open the double door to Geli's room and found the 23-year-old sprawled face down across the floor, with a pistol, owned by Hitler, by her side. Winter told police that she had shot herself. However, when Geli's body was discovered, the Münchener Post reported that her nose had been broken. She had supposedly left a letter unfinished on a desk nearby, indicating that she was about to leave her uncle's apartment to go to Vienna. The murky circumstances that surrounded Geli's death fueled rumours of murder, that Hitler had never left for that meeting, and instead shot her himself. Or perhaps she had fallen pregnant with Hitler's child and she was driven to suicide. Hitler's half-nephew, William, had claimed, quote, when I visited Berlin in 1931, the family was in trouble. Everyone knew that Hitler and Geli had long been intimate, and she had been expecting a child, a fact that enraged Hitler. There was no autopsy and no inquest into Geli's death, but upon hearing the news, Hitler was apparently inconsolable. He was even thought to have become a vegetarian because the sight of meat reminded him of Geli's bloodied corpse. Her room in the second-floor Munich apartment was sealed off, and just 16 months after his half-niece's death, Hitler became the Chancellor of Germany. The world, without Geli in it, was about to become unrecognisable. That was the life of Geli Raubal, and this was Crown Undone.